Look closely at your body. Chances are you have one of these physical anomalies without even realizing it. Let's explore 15 common human deformities. Let's zoom in.
First up is a deviated septum. The septum is the wall of cartilage and bone that divides your nose into two separate chambers. In a perfectly symmetrical body, it would sit exactly in the middle. However, for nearly 80% of the human population, this wall is off-center or crooked. If you constantly feel stuffed up on one side, get frequent sinus infections, or snore loudly, you likely have a deviated septum. Most minor cases go completely unnoticed, but severe deviations can drastically restrict airflow and require surgery to correct. Next is mild scoliosis. When viewed from behind, a healthy spine should run straight down the middle of your back. But in people with scoliosis, the spine curves sideways, often taking on the shape of a C or an S. This condition usually develops just before puberty during a rapid growth spurt. While severe scoliosis can be painful and require a brace or surgery, mild scoliosis is incredibly common and entirely harmless. You might just notice that one shoulder sits slightly higher than the other, or your clothes hang a bit unevenly. Have you ever stepped out of a pool and noticed your footprint looks like a solid oval? You likely have flat feet, also known as pes planus. Normally, the tendons in your foot pull tight to form an arch, which acts as a natural shock absorber when you walk or run. But for some people, these arches never fully develop during childhood, or they collapse later in life due to wear and tear. While many people with flat feet never experience a single issue, it can sometimes alter your walking mechanics and cause aching pain in your knees and lower back. Take a look at your bare feet. Is your second toe longer than your big toe? This is a very common structural variation called Morton's toe, affecting roughly 20 to 30% of the population. Historically, the ancient Greeks actually considered this to be the idealized standard of beauty, which is why the Statue of Liberty has a longer second toe. Medically, it just means your first metatarsal bone is shorter than your second. However, it can change the way your foot distributes pressure, sometimes leading to calluses or requiring shoes with a wider toe box for comfort. This next one is less of a genetic anomaly and more of a modern epidemic: forward head posture, often called text neck. In a neutral position, your head weighs about 10 to 12 pounds. But for every inch your head tilts forward to look at a smartphone or a laptop monitor, the weight placed on your cervical spine essentially doubles. This unnatural curvature forces the muscles in your neck and upper back to work completely in overdrive just to keep your head up. Over time, this chronic strain leads to tension headaches, shoulder pain, and a visible hunch at the base of your neck. Now look at your hands. Hold them flat and look at your pinky fingers. Do they curve inward toward your ring finger? This is called clinodactyly. It is a congenital condition, meaning you are born with it, and it happens when the middle bone in your pinky finger develops in a wedge shape rather than a standard rectangle. This causes the finger to bend at an angle. It is a highly heritable trait, meaning if you have it, one of your parents probably does too. Thankfully, it is almost entirely cosmetic and rarely affects your grip strength or hand function. Lift your tongue up in front of a mirror. You will see a small band of tissue connecting the underside of your tongue to the floor of your mouth, called the lingual frenulum. In people with a tongue tie, medically known as ankyloglossia, this band of tissue is unusually short, thick, or tight. This restricts the tongue's range of motion. In infants, it can make breastfeeding very difficult. In older children and adults, a severe tongue tie can actually cause speech impediments, making it hard to pronounce certain letters like R, D, or L. Often, a simple medical snip of the tissue fixes the issue instantly. Pectus excavatum is a structural deformity where a person's breastbone, or sternum, is sunken inward into their chest. It often looks as though a scoop was taken out of the center of their torso. This happens when the cartilage connecting the ribs to the breastbone grows abnormally, pushing the bone inward. While mild cases are just a cosmetic variation, severe cases can actually press against the heart and lungs. This can restrict lung capacity and cause fatigue or shortness of breath during intense physical exercise. Your scapula or shoulder blade should normally rest flat against the back of your rib cage. But in a condition known as winged scapula, the inner border of the bone visibly sticks out, making it look almost like a small wing. This usually isn't a problem with the bone itself, but rather with the muscles and nerves that hold it in place. Damage to the long thoracic nerve can paralyze a muscle called the serratus anterior. Without this muscle pulling the shoulder blade tightly to the ribs, the bone protrudes, which can cause pain and restrict your ability to lift your arm above your head. It might sound surprising, but the vast majority of humans are asymmetrical. Specifically, having unequal leg length is incredibly common. Up to 70% of people have one leg that is slightly shorter than the other. Usually the difference is just a few millimeters, which your body easily compensates for by slightly tilting your pelvis when you walk. You probably never even notice it. However, if the difference is more than a centimeter, it can drastically alter your biomechanics, leading to chronic lower back pain, knee issues, and a noticeable limp if left untreated with orthotics or shoe lifts. Open your mouth wide and say ah. That little punching bag hanging at the back of your throat is called the uvula. But for about 2% of the population, this tissue is split down the middle, creating a fork-like shape known as a bifid uvula. This happens during fetal development when the tissues that form the roof of the mouth fail to fuse together completely. A bifid uvula is actually considered the mildest possible form of a cleft palate. For the most part, it causes zero problems, though some people might be slightly more prone to ear infections. Look very closely at the area right where the front of your ear meets your face. Do you have a tiny pin-sized hole there? This is called a preauricular pit. It is a congenital anomaly that forms during the 6th week of fetal development, when the ear structures don't perfectly merge together. Some evolutionary biologists theorize that these tiny dimples could actually be an evolutionary remnant of fish gills. Most of the time, they are just harmless little skin tracts, though they can occasionally get clogged or infected, requiring medical attention. A supernumerary nipple is exactly what it sounds like, a third or sometimes fourth extra nipple on the body. It is surprisingly common, affecting roughly 1 in 18 people globally. During embryonic development, mammals form a milk line that runs from the armpit down to the groin. Usually, this tissue regresses, leaving just 2 nipples on the chest, but sometimes a tiny patch remains. Because they are often quite small and lack underlying breast tissue, people frequently mistake their extra nipple for a simple mole or a birthmark for their entire lives. Inside your foot, right above your arch, is a bone called the navicular. But up to 15% of people are born with an extra, redundant piece of bone or cartilage right next to it, known as an accessory navicular. This extra bone is actually embedded within the tendon that holds your foot arch up. For many, it simply causes a noticeable bony bump on the inner side of the foot. However, if that tendon becomes inflamed from running, or if rigid shoes press tightly against the bump, it can cause severe, persistent pain, requiring physical therapy or even surgical removal. Finally, we have diastasis recti. This is the partial or complete separation of the rectus abdominis, the muscles commonly known as your six-pack. These muscle bellies are held together by a band of connective tissue down the center of your stomach. When massive internal pressure builds up, most commonly during pregnancy or sometimes from improper heavy weightlifting, that connective tissue stretches out and thins, causing the muscles to permanently separate. This can leave a visible bulge or pooch in the middle of the abdomen and severely weaken the core, leading to lower back pain and poor posture. The human body is incredibly diverse, and perfection is just a myth. These so-called deformities are simply natural variations of human anatomy. If you discovered you have one of these today, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.